Martha, thank you so much for being here. We are super grateful to have you. And maybe if you want to just sort of reintroduce yourself, talk a little bit about the campaigns that you've worked on, and then we can launch right in.
Good morning, everyone. I'm thrilled to join you. My name is Martha Boneta Fain, and I work with candidates across the country, from presidential candidates, gubernatorial, state house races, congressional, senatorial, and I've found myself in this particular niche. I enjoy it very much, and I'm thrilled to be with you this morning, even if briefly, because I do have another commitment. But I encourage everyone to reach out to me afterwards if you have any questions or anything I can do to help you in your respective races. So with that said, we're going to kick off with talking a little bit about where do we go from here. You've talked about it with your friends and family. You've decided to run for office, and regardless of what seat you're running for, it's going to take resources. It's going to take an army of support from your network, volunteers, campaign advisors, a campaign manager. I highly recommend that before you do anything, you create a finance committee, and a chair of your finance committee. And I also think it's really important for compliance and legal and ethical reasons to have a legal compliance officer, or as you heard before, to hire a compliance firm. That's really going to be important as you go through the labyrinth of running for office. So let's start by talking a little bit about where do we begin to raise money. There are many different ways to do that. We're going to go ahead and go through this list. A good portion of the candidate's time will be spent fundraising, and that's going to include time on the phone, literally making calls. And you're going to be cold calling and being comfortable making calls. You're going to fine tune your pitch, or you introduce yourself and you're going to explain. If it's a cold call situation, somebody knows nothing about you, you're going to want to highlight, why should this person give money for your campaign in a concise manner. And I highly recommend practicing, write it out, know it well, so that it flows out of your mouth very freely and effortlessly. And I encourage everybody to take the time, spend the time, because depending on how much you're asking for, you really want to make sure that you're able to clearly articulate and express why you're running for office. And my experience has been that people will give if they feel as though, first of all, that you're able to speak to their concerns, but also that you're able to show how passionate you are about your position that you're running for, why you're running. So as it says on the screen, your larger donors will require more personal attention. That's very important. You want to make your donor feel important enough to spend their time with you, but also to give money to you. In terms of tracking your outreach, there are numerous databases, numerous programs out there that will help facilitate that for you. I tend to not, give specific names. I want the candidates to really do an analysis, think about the cost involved. What sometimes these databases, will require all kinds of not just a financial obligation from you, but you want to make sure that the content that you enter, you are retaining, and that it's not being used for any other purpose. That's really important to protect the private information of your donors. I can't tell you how many times donors will say, listen, I gave you my information. I don't want it to be sold. I don't want it to be shared. It's specifically for you and your campaign. And you have to be really conscientious of that when you use some of these databases to make sure that you're putting your donors' privacy first. So just something to keep in mind. In terms of drafting emails, you want to draft an email that gives supporters basic information about you and your race. I want to express how important it is to make sure that the message is fine-tuned and it is not too lengthy. Studies show that people make their decision very quickly. So I encourage brevity. Also, people want to see who you are. Include pictures of yourself. I work with a lot of veterans. Include pictures of yourself when you served our country. Maybe include pictures of your family. Include some visual pictures that tell a story about you and why you're the most qualified candidate for the position you're running for. go to the next slide. We can go to the next slide.
I think it may take, there might be a little bit of a delay. So actually, yeah, there you go.
So I do, in addition to digital, which I highly recommend, it is probably one of the least expensive ways to reach a significant amount of people quickly and efficiently. You can do digital advertising on social media, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, many other platforms. So I encourage that, in addition to direct mail, which of course is snail mail. It's where your voters, your constituents will actually receive something in their mailbox. And then of course, there's door-to-door engagement and other forms of community outreach. But right now we're going to focus on events. I do events every week. When we're in peak campaign season, I can do 3 a day. We'll start with a breakfast event, depending on what else is happening. We'll go on to do a lunch event, and then a reception and a dinner. And in between, we're making phone calls. It is depending on what you're running for, how much you need to raise, you'll spend a good bit of your time fundraising, and you should have a good team with you that knows how to do it, but also is going to be compliant in the process. So in terms of events, as you heard earlier, having a host committee is very important. Your host committee are ambassadors for you. They're going to reach out to their respective networks to raise money for you. I think it's wonderful to have endorsements. I don't want to use the word headliners, but individuals in your community or your state that are even national figures that have name recognition, that will come to your event, say a few words to support you. That will bring a large number of people as well. And even if it's a local school board or a local race, it's still nice to have individuals in the community that are well known that can come and support you. And they don't even necessarily have to be politicians or well-known figures. It could be a local hero in your community, somebody maybe that's done something great for your community, that would come, that supports you and supports your race, that will come to your event and show support for you. So I encourage that as well. In terms of crafting the invitation, there's different compliance requirements all over the country. All of our events, the events that I do, will say paid for by, and it'll be friends of Jane Smith, or the committee in support of candidate Jane Smith, so that on the bottom it says who is paying for this event, where is the money coming from to support this event, and of course where is it going. In terms of collecting money, it's really important that you have a team of people around you that's going to collect the information accurately and make sure that it is available, readily available, and accessible. That is going to be so important. A lot of your time is going to be spent collecting data. That data you'll use throughout your political career, and it's really important. I just want to echo what the prior speaker said, how important that is. So when you're at these events, you're going to want to make sure you collect that data. And let's go to the next. We can go to the next slide. Okay, so what should you talk about? How long should I speak? Who else should speak? Ask for contributions. Covered a lot of this, but in terms of doing the ask, now, many people have different ways of looking at this. I ask for money for political contributions, but I also do philanthropic fundraising as well. I'm very comfortable doing the ask. It's something that you will need to become very comfortable doing as well. I can tell you that your sincerity and the genuineness with which you do the ask is very important. Depending on the amount you're asking for, whether it's $5 or $1 million, it's really important to let the donor know what the money is going to be used for. So many times I attend other events where the ask is made, but for what purpose the money is going to be used is not stated. And then of course the follow-up is always wanting to know more details. Where's the money going to go? How is it going to be used? A lot of donors, particularly for the larger asks, really want to know where their money is going and what it's going to be used for. So it's really important when you're communicating the ask, when you're asking for the ask, that you relate to the donor, what is my money going to be used for? Okay, next slide. Direct mail, depending on the race, there may not be the budget for direct mail. It can be very costly. Having said that, direct mail has been around forever. I always get the question, well, Martha, with social media, how important it is to engage in direct mail. Well, it's very important. Not everybody is glued to their cell phones or to their laptops 24/7. And so you really want to reach as many constituents as possible. And direct mail is the way to do that. Having said that, for some of these smaller races, it is costly. You may not have the resources to do that. There's a multitude of direct mail companies out there. It's really important to do your research. Many of them will keep a significant percentage of the raise. So you're really going to want to be mindful of that. You'll note here it says it takes 14 impressions before a voter recognizes your brand. That is so true. I can't emphasize that enough. And you want to differentiate yourself from the other candidates. But direct mail is important. It obviously raises your name, brand, and your recognition in your community. You want to use a database that allows your campaign to follow up with a donation request. And of course, this says to send in 90-day windows prior to your election. That's really the sweet spot. It is. You can do multiple direct mail. You can do multiple direct mail to your constituents. You really can. And depending on the race, so many of us are bombarded with our mailboxes full of political campaign advertisements. But it does work. I encourage doing a multitude of outreach. Digital, print, radio. The larger races, of course, we do ad buys. We can go to the next slide. All of these points are really important. Most people will quickly look. You want to have a captivating direct mail piece. Companies will design them for you. They will have their own graphic artists that will make a visually appealing direct mail piece for you. But I want to express brevity. So many of these direct mail pieces are very long, very tiny print. You want to really be able to capture somebody's attention, and really in all forms of marketing, right, for your campaign, not just print, but you really want to make sure that your message is concise and brief and professionally done. It's not to say that you can't have a friend of a friend or a neighbor, volunteer and do these for you, but you really want to make sure that the message is clear, concise, and reflects your values for your campaign. Go to the next slide. So digital and social media. So this is something that I'm very passionate about. It is the least expensive way and the quickest way to reach as many people as possible. It makes it very easy. You want to make it very easy for supporters to make a contribution with a link to donate everywhere: website, social media, email links, direct mail pieces, QR codes. So we are seeing a lot more QR codes in terms of engagement. It is easy to incorporate QR codes into your campaigns. I highly recommend that. It is the least expensive way, as I discussed before, and you're able to target your audience. So you can really drill down and make very finite targeting in your digital campaigns to specific geography. You can have specific terms that are used to capture, your audience. If you only want to capture a left of center audience or a right of center audience, you can be very fine-tuned in terms of your engagement. So highly recommend your digital and social media campaigns. There are firms that will do this to you. Again, you really want to do your research. You can also do it yourself if you're on a budget. Next slide. Right. You want to make sure that you're doing the ask throughout. Yes, absolutely. Boosted posts outperform. Yes. So spending that extra dollar, that the extra money to boost your campaigns, it's essential. You can post something on your Facebook page, by way of example, your website, your Twitter account, and it won't get as much traction as it would for a paid boost. So highly encourage that. Use visual content versus just text-based posts. Videos and infographics are among the most shared social posts. Selfie videos read as authentic and outperform. we did a campaign, and I'm going to be very brief to tell you about this. We did a campaign where the candidate had no money, was horrible at fundraising, but what she did was literally have her daughter follow her around in the community and videotape her. It was authentic. It was real. It showed her doing everything from, talking to people in the grocery store line to, doing door to door, door knocking. And it went over so well. It was so real, so authentic. She ended up winning her race and I'm not saying this works for everybody, but the point is, these authentic, real life experiences really do very well. Next slide. So in terms of the emails, you really do want to differentiate yourself from everybody else. People are bombarded with emails every day. You want to have a captivating subject line. You want to make it brief, visually appealing. You want to stay on focus. A lot of people will do endorsement emails. They can be very successful as well, where you'll have a prominent individual endorse you, and they'll write an email for you, send it out to their network. I think it's really important to really focus on, why should somebody read this email? If you're doing an ask in the email, link that ask to something that's important to most of your constituents in the community. Maybe your roads need to be fixed, right? Maybe that's really important to the community, or maybe something has happened in your community that you want to be you're the reason why they need to vote for you, because you're going to provide the solution for that problem that affects everybody. So really focus on being targeted. The ask should be clear, and it should be easy for the reader to click and pay to make their donation. It shouldn't be very difficult. I receive these emails all day long from candidates where it's very complicated. It's very hard to find how to make the donation. So those are things to think about. Next slide. This is very important. You don't only want to reach out to your constituents when you're asking for a donation. It's really important to make that human connection. So at least a third of your emails should not be directed to dollar asks. I can't emphasize enough how important this is. You can update on your progress. What is your solution? What is your plan? What is your platform? Personal stories in your community, why you're running. Of course, creating urgency is very important. I'm using kicker emails. These are replies to previously sent emails that appeal to a deadline. Something I want to talk about as well that we may touch on later on, but in case we run out of time, I want to do it right now. Sometimes you'll have donors that will say, I'm going to donate X amount of dollars to you, but I'm going to do it as a match. And I personally enjoy those challenges. Let's say you have a donor who says, look, I'm going to give you $100,000 or $500,000, whatever the amount is. Let's say it's $1,000. I'm going to give you $1,000 if you have a small race, but you have to match as a match. So I will match up to $1,000, or I will, if you raise $1,000, I will give you $2,000. These kinds of incentives are great, and they work really well with your constituents. That might be an example of an email that you might send out as well. Next slide. Texting. So I want to caution about texting. There are lots of rules and regulations about texting. However, having said that, over 90% of texts are seen and opened within minutes of being received. It is one of the most the most successful campaigns you can do, but it's really important to make sure that you're compliant. There are lots of rules and regulations. A lot of campaigns aren't very good about making sure they follow these rules and regulations, but you want to make sure that when you're doing these campaigns, these massive texting campaigns, that you're compliant. Make sure that the person receiving the text wants to receive the text, has approved to receive the text. For every $1 spent on a political SMS fundraising campaign, it brings in on average $5 in support. Also recommend peer-to-peer texting. That is extremely successful. Your supporters go out and they are sending texts on your behalf that your campaign has crafted to their friends. That is obviously very, very successful. A to P, app to person texting It's a political campaign or organization uses a platform to send thousands of text messages in a short period of time to subscribers who have opted in to receive text messages. That is so important. Again, I can't emphasize this enough. Make sure that they have opted in to receive these texts. Next screen. How do I choose an online donation platform? So we've touched on this before. I don't act as an ambassador for any specific platform. Not everybody's going to be happy with their platform choices. It's really important to make sure that you fully understand what the fees are involved. What do they do with the information that they receive from your campaign? You want to guard that information very carefully and closely to protect the privacy of your donors, while at the same time, making sure that you have a system that's going to work for you. So really do your due diligence and research. What are the fees involved? What are they going to do with the information collected, and so forth. Next slide. Recognizing your donors, that is so important. I can't tell you enough how important it is to recognize your greatest supporters, unless they tell you otherwise. Unless they say, listen, I run a business and I sell my product to Republicans, Democrats, undecided, independent, libertarians. I really don't want to have a big acknowledgement at the event that you're doing that, I'm one of your largest supporters. Unless somebody says that, most donors really do want to be recognized and acknowledged for their generosity. They want people to know that they supported you. So it's either a public acknowledgement or it's a private one. You thank them, handwritten thank you letters. People appreciate them. Nobody's writing handwritten letters to each other anymore. To receive that handwritten thank you from your campaign really shows that you've taken the extra effort to recognize and acknowledge that, and show gratitude. You can also do a simple phone call. Listen, we really want to thank you so much for your donation. It can come from you or from a member of your staff. You're going to be very busy, but really want to make sure that you're thanking your donors.